guys, Kevin from LCRC here again, working on our T6.2 stadium truck. Today we're going to go over the shock setup and make sure that we have everything that the setup sheet calls for. So we're going to start out by taking the bottom spring seats off the shocks. And I'm just going to do one front and one rear just to show you the setup and give you the difference between the two. So we get the spring seats and the shock springs off. We're going to take the caps off. I like to put them on a paper towel here to let them drain a little bit. And find an empty water bottle or Gatorade bottle somewhere, and we're going to drain the fluid. And we can let that sit upside down until we get through the rest of them. And get the caps off. Try and keep the caps and the spring seats and stuff organized with what shock came off of what. And we'll set that aside. Maybe even put the cap back on just so it doesn't get knocked over and make a mess. So now, take the front shock. You're going to take your shock shaft pliers. You're going to very carefully take the end eye off. Once the end eye is off, I like to loosen the seal head a little bit just so it doesn't pinch the O-rings so tight. Push it so the shaft and the piston come out. We'll take our towel, and then we're going to compare the number. I know it's super hard to see on camera, but there's a little number etched in the piston right there. This is a 1.6, and per our setup sheet, our front shock is supposed to have, a 1.6, 2-hole by 1.6, and this has 2 holes and they're 1.6. So we're good to go on the piston. Limiter wise, it's supposed to have 1 internal and 1 external. And sure enough, there is 1 internal shim. So internally, we're good to go. We're gonna make sure there's no shims left inside the body, and there isn't. So very carefully push that back down in. Another reason why we loosen the seal head is so that the threads of the shaft don't catch the O-rings in the seal head. You can go ahead and tighten that back up, make sure everything works smoothly. And then once again, externally it calls for 1 limiter, so we're going to go ahead and put this limiter back on, and then we can start our end eye. Get our shock shaft pliers, and then the next step is going to be to check the stroke, which is going to be the distance between the bottom spring or the bottom seal head and this limiter here. So we're looking for 28, and right now we have 27.25. So loosen her up. Doesn't take much when you start getting within a millimeter of it. It doesn't take much for the adjustment. So just do like. And 28.0. So there you have it. That's how you check the stroke. So at this point, we're going to take and we're going to start the fluid in the front shocks, which calls for AE 37.5, but I've got Flashpoint and it's measured by CST. So we're going to check our conversion chart, and 37 converts to 450 CST. So we're going to go ahead and use Flashpoint 450. What I like to do is collapse the shaft 5 or 10 millimeter before I put the oil in. Fill it almost clear to the top. Push the shaft in. Don't let the piston come out of the oil. Give it a second or so, and then you can pull the shaft very slowly back down. And it makes the smaller bubbles are less because of having that big air bubble under the piston. And then at that point, you can fill it full, and you can stroke it 1 time or so if you'd like. You'll see the smaller bubbles in the oil, and we'll just prop that up in our shock stand, car stand, whatever you got. You can 8-scale guys even use 8-scale wheels sometimes, but plenty of ways to prop them up. Then we're going to go ahead and do the same process with our rear shock. Now keep in mind that there are different specs in the setup sheet for the rear shock. So we're going to do the same procedure. And then the rear shock calls for 1 limiter on the inside and nothing on the outside. So, and again, it calls for that 1.6 piston, which again, 2-hole, 1.6, so that's right, 1 limiter, no limiters stuck in the body. Seal head's loose, so we'll go ahead and put the shaft back in the rear body. Pull it down, we'll tighten up the seal head, make sure everything works smooth. We'll get our end eye started. And then the stroke on the rear shock is to be 35. So we put the end eye on to the threads. And there we go. 35.0 on the rear stroke, works good. So then for the rear, it calls for 30 weight. So then we go back to our conversion chart, 350 is the CST conversion for 30 weight. So we'll go ahead and we'll get us a bottle of 350 and we'll repeat the fluid process on the rear, and we'll be back to take a look once the air bubbles have bled out. Okay, Kevin back here again. So we gave it a little bit of time, got the air bubbles bled out, stroked the shock, and it's good and smooth. So we're going to go ahead and take our cap. Now these are emulsion shocks, so they have bleeder screws and no bladders. So we'll put our cap on just to make sure we get the threads right. And then we'll take, these are J Concepts caps. They have 1.5 millimeter hex head screws. So we'll take the bleeder screw out and then we'll go ahead and tighten the cap. Some guys use the shock tools to do this. I usually just do mine hand tight. I like to take a paper towel and hold the cap. You always hold it with the bleeder screw facing straight up in the air. That way your air bubbles that are in there want to escape first. And then collapse the shock to 0 rebound and put your bleeder screw in. You do want to be careful that you get the screw started straight. There is a small bore hole, so it is easy to cross thread. So we get that in there. We'll wipe off our excess fluid. And you stroke your shock a couple times. Don't be worried if the first time you go to extend it, if it draws back in a little. If you stroke it hard a couple times, it'll build a little pressure and that'll start to go away. You will want to re-bleed these once you go drive the first time, and then most guys will tell you that they like to re-bleed their shocks at least once an event or more. So again, once you finish the bleed process on the front shock, you can repeat the same process on the other 3 shocks. It's all the same procedure, and at that point, you verify that you have the right springs, and go ahead and put the spring seats back on, and get ready to put your shocks on the vehicle so we can set ride. Hope this helps you with your setup on your shocks for carpet racing on your T6.2, and look forward to seeing you in another video. Have a good day.